So just like most people probably watching this that pay attention to hockey news like I do, well, I was just starting to get a tad burnout on the whole D'Angelo debacle. In result, while I'm not denying that I might have a little something, on the back burner still regarding the highly controversial character, I thought in order to avoid burnout and probably annoying you all with relatively the same criteria, I decided to turn to another interesting topic, as in players thus far that haven't quite lived up to expectations, and therefore have become disappointments to fans and spectators alike. Therefore, I'm going to be going through the ranks and revealing the handful of players who haven't been at their best yet early in the season. And with that, here are the top 5 most disappointing players in the league thus far. While I guess I could have said D'Angelo technically instead, I decided to go with Twig, aka Elias Pettersson. I remember when the season first began, and the whole team kind of looked out of sorts, as players such as Brock Besser and Bo Horvat were trying to carry the workload. And unsurprisingly, the Canuck that was taking the brunt of the criticism to start was number 40. Now you may be thinking, but Alyssa, Petey's got 8 points now in 13 games, and that's still a very valid point, but for a guy that was close to a point per game last season with 66 and 68 games played, you have to at least admit that going 6 games to start the season without a goal was uncharacteristic for this Swedish sensation. And to elaborate a little, after 8 games into the season, the forward was only able to muster up 2 points while riding on a 5.6 shooting percentage. Now obviously many Canucks fans are probably starting to breathe a little easier as of late, because he has now tallied 6 points in his last 4 contests for Vancouver, so not all hope is lost. But it still is a little bit of a head scratcher considering that 4 of his teammates are currently topping him in points, and Brock Besser has more than twice the shooting percentage, with the same games played, and close to the same time on ice. Regardless, this definitely isn't me trying to pick on a fan base that's already fallen on hard times. Just saying, as a star player for the team, he has room to be better, and time, because the season's still early. A defenseman being drafted first overall doesn't typically happen, so when Rasmus Dahlin was taken first overall by Buffalo a few years back, expectations were certainly high for him coming in. And for the most part, on a struggling team, Dahlin delivered for his first 2 seasons, while eclipsing the 40-point mark, but after the bar is set for a player like that, well, the expectations just don't go away overnight, and they're kind of expected to still meet them. So for Dahlin coming in to go the first 6 games entirely without making the score sheet, well, to see that for Buffalo fans had to be pretty troubling. Definitely not going to try to bash the guy, but you have to admit that seeing him fall down to the second pairing indicates that something isn't right. Regardless, after committing various defensive mistakes and not producing offensively, Dahlin found himself warming the bench during a game against Washington. With 1 goal and 3 points in 10 games played thus far, the consensus here isn't that the defenseman's a bad player, instead that he's much better than this, and has lots of room to improve. Similarly to Dahlin, Alexis Lafreniere also knows what it's like to come into the NHL with lots of expectations riding upon him, as the most recent first overall pick while playing for Rimouski was compared oftentimes to the next one, Sidney Crosby, and for good reason, because when you notch over 120 points in a season, well, it's kind of a big deal. Anyways, despite this though, after making his NHL debut, the forward seemed to struggle to produce. But after going for 6 games without a point, I know this just seems to be the magic number here for some reason, Lafreniere was finally able to net one against Buffalo. Regardless, while playing on the first line with previous 40-goal scorer Mika Zibanejad and Pavel Buchnevich, number 13 has only been able to muster up that single goal in 9 games played thus far. Now, this is definitely not me overreacting and saying he's a bust, but just saying that this probably is not what many expected from a player that was one of 2 in QMJHL history, alongside number 87 that was a back-to-back MVP award winner. We saw it with Jack Hughes in his first year, and see them again with Lav as well, as in 2 words, growing pains. The curious case of Matt Murray. So it is definitely a puzzling mystery, am I right? I mean, you see this guy breaking records in Pittsburgh as a rookie, winning 2 cups, and then suddenly his numbers turn from stellar to average at best. And really, you kind of felt for the guy, at least I did, towards the end of his tenure in the Steel City. Now for me as a Pens fan, I'd be lying if I said I was never frustrated, because I was, but I'm sure it would be mentally tough to see your job being slowly taken from you. Anyways, after leaving Pittsburgh and heading to his home province of Ontario to play for the Senators, I'm sure the organization was far from expecting a Vezina or a Hellebuck-esque type of season from Matt Murray to start. Sure, bringing in the Stanley Cup experience was a plus, but considering the overall state of the team right now, I think it's fair to say that the netminder was probably much more comfortable to start. But unfortunately, for Ottawa's starter, the same problems and tendencies have still presented themselves for him in the crease. And yes, has not been the greatest either, but he's not getting paid over $6 million a year. Regardless, Murray, after being pulled twice already in 7 games played, frustration has to be setting in. And for head coach DJ Smith, I would say that's the case as well. I mean, since he was left in the net for the whole, 7-1 loss against Vancouver, well, that kind of says it. Currently sporting the second worst save percentage with a .849, I'm hoping for Senators fans' sake that this goalie tandem, and more importantly Murray himself, can turn things around sooner rather than later. It's not really every season that you see a previous 3-time 100-point scorer struggle, like we've seen Evgeny Malkin struggle in this one so far. Coming into the 2021 campaign, it quickly became evident that number 71 wasn't himself offensively, as Malkin wasn't able to register a single point until 4 games in. Disinterested, lacking in confidence, and generally sluggish are a few terms that could accurately describe Gino this season thus far. And while he's no spring chicken out there, and probably past his prime, last season, Malkin was more than a point per game player, while notching an impressive 74 points in only 55 games played. So while Father Time never takes a day off, it seems kind of far-fetched to just chalk this up to natural decline. Currently sporting 1 goal and 5 points in 10 games played, Malkin has been surpassed by guys such as Teddy Bluger, producing from the third line, and is currently tied with another third liner in Jared McCann, who also has 5 points. Hopefully for Malkin, things will somehow, in some way, turn around. And this is coming from a disgruntled Pens fan that still has the image of the dreaded 3-0 miss playing in her head. For the love of all hockey, Gino, just please be score. Please be score for me. Can you do that? Okay, thanks.